we are at the point now where we can go ahead and do a couple things. We can export a preview render, and we can also export a final render. What's the difference? Why would you want to do that? If you're working in an environment where you've got different people that have a say in how the animation is done, you'll need to ship out a preview animation so they can approve motion content. They can say, let's frame this differently. They can do all the things that you do in the production environment. The way to do that is to come to the File pull-down menu, and you have Preview Animation right here. It creates a low-res animation that looks just like what we see here. If I click the play button, we can tell we've got flickering going on, but there's none of that blurring. We remember that we've got some depth of field going on, but that's also not showing up because that's a render time effect. That is what the preview render option gets you. A file that you can send off, somebody can see the basics and go yes, no, and make changes. It's also a fast way for you, if you want to do it. However, since you can see the exact same thing by simply clicking the play button down here in the transport controls, there's no reason to do that unless somebody else is involved in the scene. Let's go ahead and come down to the export animation, which would be a final render. Now there's some options here, and if you're new to animation or video production, let's explain a couple things that are going on. You always have the ability to export to an actual movie type of animation. Since this is being recorded on a Mac rig instead of a PC, I've got a lot of QuickTime options, but you can also have these on a PC if you've installed QuickTime and happen to have some of these codecs. On the PC, you'll also see a Windows Media Viewer, things like that. But you'll notice above this little line here, where we've got all these different types of movie formats, there are some still image formats, Photoshop document, a PNG file, Targa files. Why would you want to render an animation to still images? Well, when you import to a video editing program like After Effects or some of the other free programs that may be out there, Final Cut Pro, whatever your tool of choice is, you don't want to really use an actual animation format, because what happens is that the quality goes down because all animations, unless there's a specific codec you select that has no compression, compresses it. And when you compress an animation, it loses some quality. So when you go to a Photoshop document format or PNG format, you get still images, and these images can actually be edited by an additional editor back in Photoshop or something like that. Also, we've got an option down here that I want to call your attention to, where you could turn off pre-multiplied alpha channel. Well, what is that? For example, if we have this building back here in our scene and we don't want it to render with anime, we want to change that out in the video editing program because maybe the editor wants to change this background, maybe there's another building, we can do that and leave an open transparent space for that. All the video codecs you see here for me to work with do not export transparency. What does hold transparency information is the still images, PSD, PNG files, and I could import that into a video editing program, have transparency, and pop in a totally different image back here without having to re-render the entire animation file. So there's some real production give and take, knowing how you're going to use the file on the back end and produce it and make this little sequence right here part of a larger animation that would tell the entire story. So some of the other options here are fairly self-explanatory. And you can either engage them or disengage them. A nice one is to render at half dimensions because it's just faster, but you get to see a high-res result if you want to see what it will look like without doing a complete full-size render. We also have a range of animation up here, and I need to point out that if there is some change at some point, especially if you're working in an editing or edited environment, you may want to only have to change like how quickly depth of field changes or something like that, and you can adjust where the animation starts and finishes in terms of rendering across the sequence that you've built. So really nice capabilities that way. I've already run out the animation so we can see what it looks like. Here's our character. Let's go ahead and play it and take a look at it. See the TV flickering to the left. The signs are going on. We get our little animation. Vinny interacts with the cat and then kind of gets ticked off. And then we zoom in on the clock and we back out and we see this strange character appear in the background just as we had planned. The depth of field changes and we're back to our setting again. So really easy using the Anime Studio Pro toolset to create some really sophisticated looks that are worthy of pro-grade animations. Hope you've enjoyed this special project and a chance to see some of the functions that you can get away with in this program in action.